with your wife, you need to schedule time too. You need to schedule time for conversations. Sometimes you got to schedule time for sex. Why? Because life gets in the way. You're not going to always be able to do those things just freely the way that you want to. All right, fellas. So today I want to talk about why marriage is a full time job. If you're married right now or have been married, this is definitely for you. Okay. You all understand what I'm talking about when it comes to a full time job. If you have a job, then you understand. So, like, comment, subscribe, and let's get into it. Ultimately, the reason why I say marriage is a full time job is because you currently have a job where you work 8 to 12 hours a day. If you work 8 hours a day, you probably work 5 days a week, 10 hours, 4 days a week, 12 hours, 3 days a week. Most people work 8 hours a day. Doctors, nurses, stuff like that, they usually work around 12 hours, sometimes longer, just depending on what's going on in the nursing industry. But normal people work a regular 9 to 5 job. They go home after that, whatever the case it is. But when you get on that job, you already know what you're going to encounter. The first day you've ever worked at your job, it was new, it was exciting, everything was good. You didn't really have any problems that came up. There may have been some issues, but you were excited. It was a brand new job. You're ready to get into it, ready to start working again, just really make things happen. But as time goes on in that job, you get more emails, more phone calls, more messages, more meetings. And you already know, man, when you get those meetings and teams, that little sound that makes, whether it be a phone call on Teams, is absolutely the worst. It is absolutely one of the worst sounds in the world. I hate that sound. I'm so glad I don't have to hear it like that, at least for right now. But you all know what I'm talking about, right? It's just email after email, follow up, follow through on a phone call with your boss. And after the phone call ends, you got to go into the meeting with your boss, with the other people. And then after the meeting's over, then you have maybe a 10-minute break before your next meeting starts. And it just seems like, man, like there's too much. Like it just doesn't seem to end. And of course, they want to make sure that you're there on time to the meetings and that you're consistently on the meetings. If you're missing the meetings more than enough, they're going to recognize it. They're going to say something about it, and it's going to be a problem. So it's either you get it figured out or you don't. But here's the thing. You go, you're there, you show up every single day. Even if you don't like it, you do, because you know that that money that you're getting from that job is going to be very important to take care of the things that you have, your bills, mortgage or rent, um, food, just all those things, right? Anything that you have to spend money on, which is like considered as a bill, those are things that you go to work for, right? Sometimes people go to work for just like extra money or whatever the case it is. But in this situation, and most people are going to work because that is their source of income. So this is what you do every day because you know it is a necessity in order for you to live, right? You have to have these things in order for you to live the life that you want to live. So if that's the case, then why do some men treat their full-time marriage like a part-time job? That's an honest question. Some men treat their marriages like a part-time job. A part-time job is this kind of the same as a full-time job, except for your hours are pretty much cut in half, roughly, right? And sometimes even less than that. It could be, one day a week at 8 hours, or it could be 32 hours in the week, but you're not hitting 40, right? Because it's not full-time, where they're required to give you a full week's worth of pay, which is 40 hours. So some people will give that effort in that time. They'll treat a full-time marriage like it's a part-time job, right? When you should be giving your full-time job your full effort, you should be giving your full-time marriage your full effort. Now, man, this is not a slap against anyone because you're still learning, you're still growing, you're still trying to make changes. If you're here and you're listening to this, then you are trying to learn, grow, and change. That is the absolute truth, and I truly believe that. So I can't blame you for that, but I just want to list off a few reasons as to why I believe men sometimes treat their full-time marriage like a part-time job. Number one, sometimes you're just over it, right? You get up in the morning, you go to your job, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling it. So then guess what sometimes you'll do? Yeah, so I'm not gonna be able to come in today. Oh, and you call it the perfect time when that throat, it's a little bit raspy, so it sounds a little type of way, and then you slide out for a day. Um, Sometimes the boss is doing the most, right? You've all worked for a boss who has been a little bit over dramatic. You've had some bosses that are very micromanagers, and it just seems like they're constantly hands on and don't really give you a break to like learn how to figure things out. Like they're constantly on top of you, like this, bro. Any mistake you make, good luck. I've seen that before. Um, you feel unappreciated, right? You feel unappreciated by management. I say management because your wife is your boss. And you feel unappreciated. You do a lot of work, you put in a lot of time and effort, but sometimes it goes unnoticed. And then again, sometimes no matter how hard you try, you ain't getting any. And so I bring that up into your home with your spouse, where you really are putting in all the effort to try do better, make changes, but they don't see that. They don't recognize the work that you're putting in. So then nothing changes for them to say, yeah, I've recognized it. So that comes down to impact. What type of change and impact are you making on that person to say that you actually are changing, right? So the reason I bring this up is because during my time of working at my job, I've had a lot of good managers, right? And some less good managers. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they were bad managers, because if they were managing, they got in that position for some type of reason. And I believe that when God puts a person in that position, like he knows it's going to happen. So I have to believe that I can learn something from this position. Whether that person didn't really fully teach me, I learned when I get into a management position how I should be able to teach the people around me, right? So I don't always take away and say that this situation was so bad that I had a terrible manager. It's like, no, I just missed the ways to take away as to why it was a good manager for me in that season. Just because I didn't learn the good way that everybody wants, right? Which is like, I want to learn all the great stuff, and they were so nice and so helpful, always so. Sometimes the mean ones and the unhelpful ones are just as good as the ones who are very helpful and considerate. Because if you can learn and say, like, man, they were like this and it was a terrible position for me, right? But it helps you grow, right? You have managers who help you grow both ways. You can find the ones who do all the things that you love that they do, and the ones that don't do the right things that you like. When you see those things, it can be like, man, that you can learn from that as well too. So when I look at all of these things, it was because of how I listened to them. I listened very detailed and very intently to what they were saying, to the good ones and the less good ones. Why? Because I understood that the more I listened, the more I was able to take away from what they were saying, whether it be good or bad, but I could mold it into a way that would be positive for me, so that I would always grow and I would always be able to learn and be in a better position than I was with the worst manager, or the bad manager, quote unquote. But it still leaves me off in a better place. Some people hold on to the resentment and all that stuff, and that's where the problem is. That's where men sometimes will fail in their marriages to their wife, because they had a manager or their boss or their wife who was rude and mean at times. And then the times they were good and nice and loving and considerate and constantly consoling you, when all that's good, when that's all happening, everything's straight. But when you're getting the other side of it, which is the frustration, the I want to sit down and talk to you type of conversation, all those things, it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't. But if you learn what you can take away from that and say, hey, I'm actually listening to what she's saying, then you're going to learn a lot more and say, like, you know what, these are actually helpful. They're not the best. They don't always like help in a sense, like the way that you would like for it to be helped, but there are other ways that you can still learn and grow and end up better long term, just through those tough conversations. And that's what managers have to have. They have to have tough conversations with you sometimes, and you have to do it as well too, right? So for me, I always think about, like, when it comes to my wife, what is she saying? What is she literally saying to me? And the only way I really know what she's saying is by going back and asking her, like, so you mean this? You mean that? And sometimes it'll be, no, that's not what I meant. And you have to get clarification. And she clarifies. And that's all right. It's good to get clarification. It's good to get that, that help, because we need it sometimes. You don't always have the right answers, and that's okay. right? So some things I recognize as like key issues when it comes to, your marriage being treated like a part-time job is time management. One is time management, and this is a part that gets tough for everybody. If you're going to work every single day and you're trying to put some money on the table, some food on the table for your wife, then guess what? You're working decent hours. Like I said, working 12 hours and then having to go home and do all this stuff can be really taxing. So sometimes you want to play video games, unwind, do all those things, but it's not going to always work that way. And that's why it's really important, if you're going to do that, just like on a job, you have to put a schedule out there, right? There's a schedule for a reason so that you don't overlap in things that are supposed to be done. So your boss or you will create a schedule for your team so that way they know what the agenda looks like today. So anything after the meeting that's going on, you can fill in your time or the rest of your day with whatever it is. But then if you don't block out that time, you already know what happens. Someone comes in, sees that you have a free time, and they schedule another meeting on top of that, and you're all upset. But that was an opportunity for you to make that change, right? But with your wife, you need to schedule time too. You need to schedule time for conversations. Sometimes you got to schedule time for sex. Why? Because life gets in the way. You're not going to always be able to do those things just freely the way that you want to, especially if you ever expect your marriage to actually be very successful. Um, the other part for this is, again, with the calendar, share it. If you're married, you guys don't have a shared calendar, you should, because your wife has things that she wants to do. You have things that you want to do. Put it on the calendar. That way you guys can both see it and both grow together and say, hey, you know what? He did put this on the calendar. Can we talk about this? Can we figure out, maybe can we move this, do that? Figure out what works for both of you guys, because it's very important. And then just some routines. Like when I used to get to my job every morning, I spoke to my team about, the day. How's it going? What's happening today? How are the guys doing? Da 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 da. Right? Go over just the basic things which they can expect almost all the time. Your wife would like to see that same thing from you. Consistency, being someone who says this thing and then they do it. Even if you didn't say it, but just a thing that you do all the time, they start to understand how you operate when it comes to your marriage. Like, hey, this is an area that we talk. We talk every single day at 6 p.m. about our marriage, things that we can do better. And then at 8 o'clock, we do it again. And then the rest of the time it's free, for us to handle business. But during these times, this is what we do. It can be helpful. And especially if you stay consistent with it, your wife is going to really appreciate those things. And you will too, because you'll start to recognize like, hey, this is needed. We actually needed this. Another thing that I think about is communication, right? How much time are you spending communicating with your wife effectively, right? So active listening, that's a very big area that people need to spend more time on. Listening actively, write it down, see what it is. So remind yourself of that conversation, because you can always refer back to it after she's done speaking, right? This is something that we've talked about many times. And then asking versus assuming. I think that's very important. Don't assume that this is what your wife meant. Ask for clarity, because once you ask for clarity, then it makes things so much easier for you and for her. And there's just no confusion. It actually seems like you care about what's being said. So I'd really think about that. And also check-ins. Like I said, schedule some time. Doesn't have to be long. It could be a simple 10 minutes, just check in, see how you're doing. Everything good? Do you need anything from me? Whatever the case it is, or anything I can do for you, blah, blah, blah. Those are simple things that men sometimes miss out on, just a simple check-in. Sometimes your wife likes knowing that you like to know how she's doing, right? She ain't going to always tell you want her to, but she's not going to. So why not just ask the question, right? But again, this is not a slap against you. It's just opportunities for us to always find ways to improve in our homes. And then honesty. If there's something you're really dealing with, talk about it. Don't let that stuff boil up, especially with your boss too, right? You wouldn't do that. Maybe you do, but that's why you guys don't get along, because all you do is complain to someone else about your boss, but you don't ever go to the source and actually share with your boss what the issue is. Same thing with your wife. Don't go to someone else and talk about your wife. Talk to your wife. Then guess what? You might find some understanding just in that simple conversation. Conflict resolution, right? This is another thing that happens so much at a job. You have to be able to really know how to do this if you're a manager, and also if you have a manager, because they're going to expect that you learn how to do that along the way. So again, really pause. Don't take time to just rush into something with not thinking about that. Don't just react. Pause, think on that, really try to understand what's being said, and then say what you have to say, because if you react without thinking, it can backfire on you, and it's the last thing you want. Um, Focus on the issue, not the person, right? The issue is the issue. The person is not the issue. The person is sharing the issue, and then they end up becoming the issue because of what they're saying. But if you focus on what they're actually telling you, what your wife is saying to you, it might make you see things a little bit different and just say, this is from her heart. It's what she's sharing. Focus on what she's sharing, not focus on who it's coming from necessarily. Oh, she's always complaining. Well, she could be, maybe because you're just never really listening to what she's actually saying. So decision making too, right? Men, we take on a lot of different things on our own, and we don't need to do all those things by ourselves. Our wives are there for a reason. They're there to help us, and not to make things harder, right? But to make things easier. And if you include your wife in the decision making and some of those processes with the family, or just simple general things like finances, I say it's not simple. It can be tough depending on your situation. Finances, why not talk about those things together? Health, why not talk about those things together? Just in general, include her in those things, and she'll start to feel more appreciated, and you'll start to feel better about you as well too, because you're not going to be sitting here complaining all day about what she is doing or what she isn't doing, and you'll actually be able to give a full-time job effort into your full-time marriage. And the other part I really want to focus on, though, is your self-help. You as an individual need to grow in your own ways, and you need to improve yourself. It's like spa day, right? You go to, get your massage, go get, whatever the case it is, whatever makes you feel better. These are all things that you need to do in general when it comes to your business, your job, and your marriage, right? You have to also get your own time to do what it is that you need to do. So again, coaching, do you need anyone to really help you to become a better husband? It doesn't hurt to have somebody in your corner who really understands marriage, who's been married for 30, 40 years, loves their spouse, and really want to help you. There's nothing wrong with that, because it just strengthens you. Reading books, right, at your job. I'm sure your manager has mentioned some type of book that's been very helpful for them and helpful in that position. So why not take some time and read that book that will help you in your position, right? Same thing with your home. You have struggles with anger, financial problems, whatever the case is, read books on those things so it can help your marriage flourish, right? And then just only focus on the specific issues. Don't go start reading stuff on, finances. If your finances are all in order and you guys are doing really, really well at it, don't go start reading stuff on sex. If you guys have a great sex life, read stuff on things that can help you grow and be better in areas that maybe not as strong, you're not as strong in, a little bit more areas that you're weaker in, to strengthen yourself so you just become more well-rounded. And then also journaling. Journaling is really good. If you have not journaled before, I promise you, man, it's going to be really helpful to get all that stuff off your chest, be able to see things a little bit differently, and just be like, release it. It's sometimes just a simple release. If you can't talk to your wife, put it in a journal, and you'll start to feel better just being able to do that. But also another thing you can do is ask for feedback. Ask for feedback from your wife on, what could be helpful. Instead of just being so frustrated about giving half effort into your marriage, put some full-time effort into it and then watch it grow. I promise you, try these things if you haven't done it before, and your marriage will start to just get better and better over time, one way or another, because you'll be doing something different that you haven't done before, and that's always a good thing. So, fellas, love you guys. Talk with you soon. See ya.